Hey guys, it's Abby. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be reading to you / reacting to some short, scary stories. Normally when I pick these stories, I do skim through them just so I can make sure it's like the type of story that I'm looking for, but I don't always read the whole thing just so there is kind of an element of surprise. But today, I'm going to be reading to you stories that I've only picked based on the title. So I'm excited to see what kind of stories these end up being. If you guys like this video, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up and click the subscribe button down below. Turn my post notifications so you never miss a video. I post every Sunday and sometimes Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And without further ado, let's just get right on into the video. Our first story is by the user trash_Tia. And the title itself is fascinating, so I have high hopes for this one. The title is, "Every year, our town's 18-year-olds are sacrificed to the sea gods. This year, it's my turn." Mom said being chosen by the sea gods would feel like butterflies in my lungs. Don't like that. My boyfriend was chosen last year. Keon started choking up blood-stained water in the middle of class. Within an hour, the town's elders dragged him down to the beach shallows. I didn't see a sacrifice, but I did hear his frightened cry. Even when they silenced Keon's voice from his throat, I heard the gurgles for breath, for mercy our town would never grant. My town had a funny way of saying, "Sucks to be you," when sacrificing their 8-year-olds to appease a sea god. Being chosen did not feel like butterflies in my lungs. Waking up with salt water gushing through my mouth, I screamed for my mother. I was choking, sputtering, drowning. It hurt, straining my chest and taking hold of my heart, squeezing between phantom fists. Mom carried me down to the shallows where the townspeople already gathered. I was forced to my knees in ankle-deep water, so cold, and yet I felt weirdly comfortable. Almost at peace, enveloped in the waves. I wasn't as scared as I thought. Mom was dragged away, and a sacrificial blade pricked my throat. I didn't even feel it. 1 second I was alive and breathing, the warm sun on my face, the cool wind brushing through my hair. Then I was sinking. Down, down. I was aware of my blood staining the water, vicious red caught in a halo around me. Deeper, and somehow my lungs were still working. My breath's coming out in startled bubbles exploding around me. I can feel it, a presence pulling me down. It was warm and cozy, and somehow I was alive. I could move. Catapulting my body further down, it was only when I began to see towering underwater landscapes, a whole city bustling with fish, did excited bubbles pour out of my mouth. Schools of fish flew past me, mer people carrying tiny mer babies with their fluttering tails. I recognized them. Maya and Olivia, who were sacrificed 2 years prior. They swam past me with brand new tails growing from their torsos, completely blanking me. I followed them, aware my human legs were a little slower. I stopped, however, when I glimpsed him, Keon. He was beautiful. Sporting a long silver tail, his dark curls were adorned with seaweed, like a prince. Keon! I had no voice. Instead, red-tinged bubbles exploded from my mouth. I started towards him, but his eyes were strangely empty, hollow. Looking closer, I noticed seaweed wrangled around his throat, markings carved into his arms and face. Keon swam past me, tailed by a bulging fish-like thing that resembled a girl. In her arms, a tiny baby with bulging eyes and a deformed head. Keon's features. Finally, the voice in my head was an inhuman boom. Above me, the inky darkness of a gnawing mouth, and out of that mouth, thousands of mutated fish people resembling men. Another female. I've never heard anything like that before. Honestly, I'm kind of bummed that this one was the first one we started out on. I feel like it'd be a good one to end on because I like it so much. But I would genuinely read an entire book series about this. I want to know how they were picked. Is it like the Hunger Games where they're drawing names, or how does this happen? How many people are picked a year? This is such an interesting concept. I love this. I think this is more kind of dystopian than straight up horror, but I do really love the story. This was a good one. Our next story is by the user Forgotten Well. It's called "My Husband Ate My Caramel Drumsticks." That already to me sounds like a horror story, so. It was a silly thing to cry about, an ice cream cone. But as I stared at an empty box in the freezer, feet and back aching, worried about doctor's appointments, the baby's due date just 2 months away, all I wanted in the world, what I craved, was the caramel drumsticks I bought for myself. Understandable. I even asked him not to eat them. I walked down the stairs to his man cave, empty box in hand. God, the stench. I counted 5 empty Keystone cans on the coffee table in front of him. What happened to the man I married? Who tried so hard to win my affection? After we got married, he stopped trying, and once I became pregnant, he grew mean. Why did you eat my ice cream? I asked, knowing I wouldn't get a real answer. Are you crying? He could see that I was, so I didn't respond. That's enough. This has got to stop. What has to stop? All this boo-hoo me, I'm a victim nonsense. I'm sick of it. All you do anymore is cry. I'm sorry for being upset. I wasn't. I don't want to see one more tear, you hear me? When I married you, I told you. I told you I wanted lots of kids. This is just number 1. There's going to be 5 or 6 more, so suck it up, Buttercup. Your life isn't so hard. It slipped out. I didn't mean to say it out loud. I don't think I want more kids. He stood up slowly from his recliner and whipped a full beer at my feet. Don't ever say that again. Never again. You'll do what I say, or I'll be rid of you. Did you know the leading cause of death for pregnant women is homicide? I didn't believe that either, but now I do. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, I growled. I'm just hormonal. I'll run to the store and get more ice cream. Do you need more beer? Damn right I do. I went to the store, I grabbed the drumsticks, lots of beer, and a little something else. He didn't even say thank you when I brought him the beer. In the kitchen, I channeled Claire Saffitz. I made a small mess melting the ice cream, refilling the cones, then repackaging them. I put the cones back in the freezer and went to sleep. When I woke, I was alone in bed. I found my husband face down on the kitchen floor. Can you believe, after crying and confronting him, the drunk still went up to eat more of my caramel cones? He ate 3 and was too wasted to taste the rat poison I'd mixed in the sweet vanilla ice cream. I took out my phone. I worked up some tears. I just had to cry for the police to make it seem natural. Then I'd never cry for him again. I'd say that's self-defense, right? I mean, to be fair, there's no way he'd ever get any better. This is who he is. Right? Right? On a real note, though, it actually is very frightening how often this story is true in real life. Maybe not the rat poisoning part. I don't feel bad for him, so just leave it at that. We've got another story by Forgotten Well. This one's called My Brother Sent Me a Late Night Text and Now I'm Panicking. My brother's text read, "Get over here now. I messed up." It was 10 after midnight and I wanted to ignore him, but Kyle's life took a turn for the worse once he got on probation. He mentioned taking his life more than once, and I was worried he finally jumped the gun. I hopped in my truck and sped over, running more red lights than I cared to admit. When I showed up at my brother's apartment, he opened the door, covered in blood. "Jesus," I said, grabbing his arms to try and find the wounds. "It's not me," Kyle uttered, pointing across the room to Jenny. Jenny was Kyle's latest girlfriend. Kyle had lots of girlfriends, but they never lasted long. Jenny lasted long enough to see Kyle's mean streak. He sent her to the ER one night, and she drunkenly filed a police report. Drunkenly? She absolutely should have filed her police report if he sent her to the ER. Are you crazy? What happened? I tried desperately not to yell. "Take her to Old Man Grady's pig farm. The pigs will eat her up and leave nothing left. Please." Our small town knew all the rumors about Grady's farm, but most of us thought it was an urban legend. "You take her," I yelled. Kyle didn't respond. He just pointed to his feet, the ankle monitor. He couldn't leave his apartment without the police knowing. Ugh. I made Kyle promise to turn his life around. No more women and no more booze. He promised and helped me roll Jenny up in a rug. I didn't like him, but he was still my brother. Old Grady's farm was a 15-minute drive up the interstate. I got there without any trouble, but as I was dragging Jenny to the pigsty, I felt a pinch in my neck. I reached up and pulled out a dart. "Oh no," I slurred as everything went black. I woke up to a bucket of cold water splashing over me. I was chained to an old tractor. An ancient man was standing in front of me in nothing but overalls. His jowls were droopy and round from years of chewing dip. "More people have tried to dump bodies here than I can count." Grady spit out a huge load of disgusting brown saliva. "You've been watching too many movies. You seem to think that a pig will eat a corpse whole and leave nothing behind." "I'm sorry," I said. Pigs can't digest hair. Pigs can't digest teeth. What were you going to do about that?" I don't know." "I'll show you the proper way to get rid of a corpse." Old Man Grady walked over to a standing tool cabinet and returned with a razor blade and a pair of pliers. "Now, do you want to lose your teeth or your scalp first?" "Oh Christ," I screamed and started thrashing against my chains. You know, if you would have just called me and paid my fee, I could have overlooked all this. Kyle always pays the fee. I guess you're the stupid brother. I feel like that's something Kyle should have warned him about. He should have let him know, like, you have to pay a fee. Or was he trying to get his brother killed? Maybe that was a plan, to get him killed too, so there'd be no witnesses? If so, that's smart. If he just forgot to tell him, that's really dumb. Kyle doesn't seem like such a great person, though. That's the vibe I'm getting from the story, is Kyle's not so great. Our next story is by the user Lighting Nations, and it's called, I Hate the Way I Feel When I See My Ex-Husband's Twin Brother. My husband and I were supposed to be endgame. We joked about how we couldn't wait to grow old together, how we wanted to be the elderly couple sinking hours into our garden, endlessly yelling at the young couples who lived next door because their cat wouldn't quit hopping the fence to poop all over the rose bushes. But then that damn 18-wheeler sped up to try to beat the red light, and those plans erupted in a giant fireball. The first 3 months as a widow were impossible, especially nights. I'd reach over to feel the warmth of Darren's body, gripping only cold sheets. I started inventing excuses to visit Darren's twin brother Ryan. Except for the beard, they were identical in every way. And after a glass of wine or two, my brain would factory reset. Then one of Darren's pet nicknames would slip out. We were both self-confessed foodies, so we had this inside joke where we'd call each other our favorite dishes. I'd say, "Can I get you a refill, my precious shepherd's pie?" Then Ryan would laugh awkwardly or respond, "You've had enough," and then drive me home. It was like a kind of torture, to be so painfully close to getting my soulmate back. But every inside joke that flew over Ryan's head was another knife twisting between my ribs. I physically couldn't carry on knowing the man I loved was just outside reach, so I did what I had to do. Just this morning, I went down to the basement. With a heavy sigh, I said to Ryan, "Morning, Pineapple." "Hello, Perla," he replied, a little hesitant. "That was a good start," I said. "Your beard's really growing in, my beloved butternut squash." "Thanks, Lobster," he said, this almost like a question, but I didn't nitpick. It was progress. After a pause, he said, "So, could I maybe get some breakfast, please?" My eyebrows raised. He cleared his throat before adding, my dearest taco?" I hurled his food tray on the floor, cereal spilling in every direction. "No, Darren never called me taco. It's burrito." "Burrito, burrito, burrito," he yelled, scrambling to cover his mistake. As I spun towards the stairs, Ryan up and slammed his fists against the glass partition separating us. He started crying, which Darren would never have done, by the way, and then slid to the ground whispering, "I'm so hungry." Crouching to his level, I said, "You know the rules. You only get to eat if you perform a perfect imitation." On a desk in the corner, there was a red notebook. I pointed at it and said, "If you'd study the notes I gave you about Darren and I's relationship, better than you wouldn't be in this mess." On my way out of the room, I said over my shoulder, "We'll try this again tomorrow, my precious ham and cheese toasty." The nicknames are weird. We'll start there. It's not going to be the same. Like, he's always going to be a weird, awkward replacement. Like, even if he memorizes everything, it's not going to be the same. I guess if someone's crazy enough to do that, they're not logical enough to think that. I wonder how she got him there. Like, did she drug him? How did that happen? It's so crazy. And then is no one, like, do they not have family? They notice that, like, he's missing now too? Fascinating. Our next scary story is by the user Punk and Prose, and it's called, I Found Out What Was Lurking Downstairs at Night. Every night, I sobbed in bed, whispering God's name, hoping to stay in the middle zone between being heard by my creator, but not by my mother on the other side of the wall. The crashes, rumbling, thumps, and bumps downstairs terrified me. Sometimes things would be upturned by the morning, but if I sobbed too loudly, my mother would come. "You brought this," she'd scream, kicking and beating me. "You did something to please Satan, and you brought the demons to our home." I would scream I was sorry, not even knowing what I'd done. One night when I was 12, I made a plan. Before the noises could arrive, I would go downstairs and open every Bible and related book in hopes of increasing God's protection over the house. In my old children's Bible storybooks, I tried to find the least scary page, one devoid of photos of slain brothers in pools of their own blood, or crushed partygoers mass killed by God's strongmen. Is that supposed to be in a Bible? I whispered for the Lord to protect me, in Jesus' name, as I laid out the books by the dim end table light. As I worked, out came Elizabeth and Cece with a playful energy. They chased each other around, a flurry of kitty paws and black and orange fur, their little feet thumping with more energy than I'd ever seen them have. I knew that sound. That sound my mother had told me was the demons I brought. The sound I'd prayed over, cried over, been beaten over. I watched them processing the connection between the sound and their feet zipping around the living room. It was just our cats? My heart still pounded in my chest. Why were they doing this? What would possess them to act like this each night? I looked it up in her dusty encyclopedia. Cats are nocturnal. And the reason they ran around at night became clear as I watched them. They had a zest for life. It was not fashionable back in those days to question the Lord, but that night was the beginning of my skepticism. I uncovered each Scooby-Doo mask of all my mother's fear-mongering. I didn't get bronchitis because I fell asleep in church. It was a respiratory infection. I didn't bleed because of a monthly curse traced to a forbidden tree. It was my body regulating itself. It wasn't a hot summer to punish me for getting too close with a neighborhood girl. The feelings blooming in my heart could not ruin the weather. And the sound that I feared was my two best friends enjoying life. By emerging from the shadows, they had saved me. Though many decades, I've retained the liveliness I've learned from them. My grandchildren are here tonight, sleeping peacefully. If they wake up to the running and tumbling, they will not pray in terror. They will ask questions, and I'll gently tell them the truth. There's nothing scary going bumping at night. It's just Elizabeth and Cece. So what happened to her mom? Did she, tell her she's crazy? This is not at all what I was expecting. But so then why is her mom getting mad at her for praying? I have a lot of questions. Let's move on. Our next story is by the user 1001 Nights. It's called Ariella and Rainbow. I am a rainbow baby. My mom named me Rainbow, literally, just to make sure no one missed the point. Not that I would have. Ariella is always with us. My beautiful, kind, smart, golden-haired sister, for that is how Mom described her to me. I remember reading the Little House series about a dirt-colored hair bad Laura and golden-haired good Mary, and Laura working as a teacher in a snowstorm in a distant prairie to afford college fees for good, kind Mary, and thinking, well, wow. Ariella died at least, so there's that. Except she didn't. She's always with us, Mom says. For the first 2 years of my life, all my clothes were hers. Mom tells me they didn't have to buy me anything new. We had everything ready for Ariella. Mom would say, her eyes full of tears. I wore the big, beautiful, soft, bright clothes meant for Ariella. The teething rings, the cloth bunnies. I played with the lovely, smart baby toys. The xylophone, the push cart, all meant for Ariella. I looked at Mom, watching me toddle around, and even then I knew she was seeing a golden-haired, beautiful, smart baby girl who could walk quicker and learn faster than I ever could. And I could see her too. The years passed, I grew up, and so did Ariella along with me. Just a few months older than me, for how could we ever forget her? Mom wasn't so keen on sending me to college, but they had already opened a college fund when expecting Ariella, and somehow kept it up. So I ended up going. I thought Ariella would stay home with her, so imagine my surprise when on the very first evening I was in my room alone, she appeared before me. Her hair shining like the electric lights on the small fancy chandelier in our living room at home, her eyes burning with the fury of the dead who die unfulfilled. You took my spot, she stated. I didn't argue. She was correct. And she would always be with me. My older sister. My beautiful golden-haired sister. I joined her because really it seemed the best, and in fact the only thing to do. I owed my life to her death. Some of the rage left her eyes once I was with her in death. It's fun being with a sister and not taking her place anymore. Once I was dead and properly with Ariella, we visited Mom, because after all, that is what she truly wanted. Her darling daughters, both of them, with her. Always and forever, by her side. That's a little depressing. That's not really scary, it's really sad. And also, messed up. I'm sure she grieves the first child, but you can't treat your second child horribly just because, you can't treat her like she's not good enough. It's your child. Yeah, that wasn't scary. That was depressing. Okay, our next story is by the user CurlyGE, and it's called Not Again. You look like a kicked puppy, he said, the anger flashing in his blue eyes. I had frozen again. You see, I don't do well with confrontation. I don't remember what grievous offense I had supposedly committed that day. I often felt that one day blurred into the next, as I'm a stay-at-home mom. That's how he liked it. I almost got out twice, in the beginning. Once I fell pregnant, I felt my options were limited. Terrified to be a single mom, I stayed, even fighting for us when he would leave time and time again, for one selfish cause or another. I raised our child alone, even though he was very much there. Everything fell to me, including using my limited government assistance to pay for everything. I reached my breaking point when he spent nearly my whole check on beer and weed. Something had to be done. This man, this useless waste of flesh, had left his son and I high and dry again. I knew that leaving wasn't an option anymore. He would maneuver his way into full custody. The man could be charming, and his words could melt you like butter. I sat lost in thought as he came home that day. Dinner forgotten, and our son with my parents for the night. I didn't know that he had a particularly rough day at work. The eggshells I usually walked upon were non-existent. There was no safe path to navigate this storm. I jumped, startled by the door when he walked in. He immediately looked at me with scorn in his eyes, asking where dinner was while berating and belittling me. For a moment, I became that puppy. I bowed my head as I prepared his dinner, knowing full well that this would be our last supper, one way or another. I took my time preparing a nice roast. I even browned the mushrooms so they wouldn't make the gravy lumpy. Dinner was finally prepared, and we sat down to a feast of London broil, roasted carrots, garlic mashed potatoes, gravy, and buttery biscuits. We sat silently. Only the clinking of silverware on plates could be heard. I nearly choked when he spoke to me. "What the hell did you put in the gravy this time?" he demanded. "The usual. I just tweaked a little," I said. He began gasping for air and grabbing at his throat. "I added a mushroom for every broken bone you've given me. I'm sure 26 will do the job." I'm not sure where your EpiPen ran off to. Did he have her coming? Maybe. Some might say. I feel like it's kind of a gray area, you know? Our final story of the video is by the user The Real Doc Turner, and it's called "My Wife is on the Verge of Madness, and There's Nothing I Can Do." My wife, my whole world is coming apart, and there's nothing I can do. She has no family history of mental illness, and there is no reason for the predicament she's in. I can't do anything. She's fallen into conspiracy theories. She's fallen into hopelessness. But on the outside, she's still fighting. I can see it in her eyes, though, the resignation and despair. She smiles and throws the frisbee to Annie. Our 9-year-old giggles and runs about without an inkling of how close she is to losing her mother. I sit on the blanket and run my fingers over the frayed weave of the old picnic basket my parents gave us when we first married. My grandparents gave it to them when they were newlyweds. I can't tell my parents. I can't tell anyone. I can't do anything. Our dog runs and nips at Annie as she chases the frisbee. On the surface, it's a perfect day. Everyone in the park is smiling, unaware that someone is dying on the inside just a few yards away from them. My wife tells Annie to play by herself, and she walks back over to me. She crashes down onto the blanket, and I can see that she's starting to cry. "I love you, but none of this is real. None of it makes sense. Babe, please try to keep perspective. Look at our daughter. Feel the grass between your toes." I grab her hand. "Feel me. Stay with us. You've got to fight it." I don't know if I can anymore. I start talking about our life and all the moments that mean something, good or bad. All the people who have come and gone. Her tears keep coming. She's about to break. I can't do anything. None of this is real. She reaches into the picnic basket and pulls out a small gun and says goodbye. My world is about to end. Just as she raises the gun to her temple, a man in a white suit is crouched beside her. He appears out of nowhere. He takes the gun from her. Everyone in the park stops moving. I try to move forward, but I can't move. I'm frozen. His voice is everywhere, the way you imagine God's voice would be. He explains to her that her reality is an illusion and that her whole life has been a simulation. He tells her that it's time to wake up. She looks happy for the first time in months. My wife and the man in the suit disappear, and I am able to move again. People in the park are panicking. I run to Annie. She's sobbing and shaking. This can't be real. I scream to heaven for my wife, begging God to give her back. We met when we were 5. I have no memory of life before her. She was my whole world. An all-consuming blackness begins to roll over the horizon. I can't do anything. So he was just like an extra actor in her simulation? Is that like... I wonder if it's kind of like it's a test. It's a video game and you have to like complete the level or like realize that you're in a simulation and then you get into heaven. But that's crazy that like all of the extra characters in her life are like real emotional beings. And it's like from his perspective. That is certainly a thinker. That is a good one to end on, I think. Let me know which story was your favorite. I hope you guys enjoyed these. I actually really enjoyed reading them for the first time on camera. I think that was like it was exciting. Like I love reading these stories for the first time. It's fascinating how people just come up with these different things. But if you guys did like this video, there will be a couple suggestions popping up on either side of me in a second, as well as a button to subscribe. So please do that if you have not already. Also, please turn on post notifications so you never miss a video. I post every Sunday and sometimes Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, so you do not want to miss that. Again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time.